What's up guys, it's Victor. The next video in this series is going to be how to build a strong home Wi-Fi network. When it comes to building a smart home, this is the most important thing besides selecting the right API and Smart Hub. If you haven't seen my last video on that, then I highly recommend you watch that first before watching this one. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. I'm really trying to get more content out there, so I'm going to be doing my best to upload at least once a week. But liking my video and subscribing really helps out my channel, and I'd greatly appreciate it. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. In order to have easy and fast access to your smart devices, then you need to make sure that you have full coverage all around your home. There are many different routers out there, but first off, if you're using the routers that came with your internet service provider, then get rid of them. They usually suck and don't offer any advanced configuring such as port forwarding, client listing, or quality of service settings. If you do have a router that came with your ISP, then that's okay. All you need to do is give them a call and let them know that you don't want it anymore and that all you need is their modem. This is the most basic device that you need that gives you internet service, and all you really need to do is get an Ethernet Cat 6 cable and plug that into a router that you will need to buy off the shelves somewhere. Currently, the most popular Wi-Fi standard is the Wi-Fi 5, or as it was previously called, AC. Things are a bit simpler now with the naming scheme, thankfully with the newest generation of Wi-Fi now being called Wi-Fi 6. I would highly recommend that if you haven't upgraded your router anytime recently, then I would get the newest Wi-Fi 6 routers. This is because the latest generation of routers can transfer data much faster than Wi-Fi 5 and keep a consistent connection with multiple devices rather than switching in between them as they currently do. Yes, the new routers are more pricey, but honestly, if you want to future-proof yourself for perhaps the next decade, then you should buy a Wi-Fi 6 mesh router system, even though there are no smart devices that exist yet that takes advantage of Wi-Fi 6. Most first-party smart devices still use the much slower 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band actually, and most third-party options use a Smart Hub that bridges them to your smart home's API. We'll get into each of these as we encounter them during this series. Which brings me to my next point. What is a mesh router system? Well, typically, when you buy a router, that is the only node that exists on your network, and it's what's being used to connect all of your devices to the internet. However, a mesh router system uses multiple nodes, but still acts as one Wi-Fi hotspot. The way this works is, once any of your devices gets too far away from one node, it'll automatically switch to the nearest node so that you can constantly get that same and consistent fast connection all the time. Normally, a single router will drastically lose its connection speed and performance the further you get away from it, or just due to interference like lights, microwaves, and other people just blocking it. But a mesh router system will help to mitigate those connection issues by evenly spreading out and connecting your nodes around your home. This is especially important when you have a lot of smart home devices that need internet access in order to be able to be controlled remotely. If your smart home devices don't have a strong Wi-Fi connection, then you will notice that it will be less responsive and it will be super frustrating. Most issues that you will get from smart devices does stem from poor Wi-Fi reception. When you set up your mesh router system, it's important to connect all of your nodes together using an Ethernet connection. This guarantees that each node will have the same consistent and fast connection as each other node. Although you can connect each of them wirelessly, I have found that a wireless connection to another node is not nearly as fast as my other nodes which have a Ethernet connection. This may look impossible for you to do, but it's not. The easiest way to get them all connected via an Ethernet connection is by using a power over Ethernet adapter such as the Netgear Powerline adapter. All you essentially need to do is output one of the additional Ethernet ports of your router into one of the adapters, and from the other adapter, output an Ethernet into the other node. Now, I haven't independently tested this solution yet, but the reviews do seem mostly positive, with people just seem to be only complaining about interference issues with other devices such as speakers. For this case, I did end up going the hard route. I took a 50-foot Cat6 Ethernet cable and ran it under the carpet by cutting a hole into it, then used a fish wire to push the cable through, leading down to a central switch, which I then used to output another 50-foot Cat6 Ethernet cable back into another node. Now, a switch is basically a device that adds more Ethernet ports that are found on the back of your router and thus allows you to connect more devices directly to your network. For better future proofing, always make sure that you get a gigabit compatible switch with at least 8 ports if possible. I currently have 4 switches set up in my home that I use to connect as many devices as I can directly to the network instead of them relying on slower and less consistent Wi-Fi speeds. Most switches also don't require you to configure them. They are just plug in and go. You may not want to do this, but if you have the skill, time, and patience, I think it might be worth it. Otherwise, you would be spending quite a bit on a pair of each of those power line adapters. So let's talk about what options are out there currently for these kinds of routers. Honestly, if you can afford it, I would definitely go with the Netgear Orbi Wi-Fi 6 system or the Eero Pro 6, which I think is more than enough for most people. I've heard nothing but great reviews about these routers and might honestly be my next router of choice once I'm ready to upgrade. I currently use the Google Wi-Fi, which I originally bought for $300. They aren't Wi-Fi 6, but they are definitely the easiest and most user-friendly router that I've ever used. They are also very reliable. Google takes out all the guesswork for you and just gets you going with Wi-Fi pretty quickly. Most routers aren't like that and do expect you to know a thing or two about networking. I can't say that I've had any issues with them for the past 4 years since I've had them. Before switching to Google, I have been using Apple's Airport Express Extreme. I would just caution you from buying any Linksys routers within this category. I've been seeing a lot of negative reviews lately about this router, and it also doesn't seem too cost effective. It's $500 for just a pair, but then $380 to add on one more, which is just crazy. A lot of people complain about these routers constantly going out or not offering the speeds they claim to have. I also helped a friend of mine recently with installing the Wi-Fi 5 version of this in his home and have noticed that it does tend to choke quite a bit, and my friend barely has any smart devices, maybe 5. Alright, so the last thing I want to discuss is security. When you set up a Wi-Fi router that isn't a Google one, you're usually asked what kind of network encryption you want. For this, always go with WPA2-PSK in parentheses AES option. It has the latest encryption technology and is the hardest to crack. However, that doesn't mean it's impossible to break into. Wi-Fi hacking is easier than you think and can be done by anyone. It doesn't even take a programmer. There are a few ways that you can help mitigate these issues, but only one of them is perhaps the most easiest, and that's to check your Wi-Fi consistently for any new and unknown devices that have connected to your network. A lot of mesh routers these days do have an app that give you a list of all of the devices currently connected, and you can even rename the devices on that list so that you know exactly each device that you've checked in. Always make sure that as you're connecting new devices onto your network, that you check to make sure that you have renamed it as the exact device that you connected. That way, whenever you see a device that isn't renamed by a name you've chosen to identify it, then you can assume that someone has breached your network and to change the password. Another, but probably not as convenient way, is to set up your routers to automatically disconnect at a certain time. Hackers typically need a steady stream of data coming from your Wi-Fi network in order to crack it. So whenever that stream abruptly stops, it forces them to have to do the process all over again. But they'll just eventually give up, as your routers will just automatically disconnect at a certain time you've set up for them to do so. So the hacker will never get the chance. I used to do this, but found it created more problems. mostly because other devices would have a hard time reconnecting sometimes, or someone in the home was doing something important like taking a test online or something, and the internet would just go out on them. Another new way to not necessarily protect your network, but to protect your data and devices within them is getting a HomeKit compatible router. Now, as we discussed in my last video, HomeKit is for Apple only, but basically what it does is to create this secure firewall within the network to prevent your HomeKit devices from talking to other Wi-Fi devices on the network or any unauthorized services through the internet. Sadly though, there aren't any Wi-Fi 6 compatible HomeKit routers at this time. Eero was expected to create their new line of routers to work with HomeKit, but it looks like they switched to Alexa. Those traitors. I'm currently waiting out for a Wi-Fi 6 HomeKit router. As soon as one lands, I'll buy it and review it. Alright, so once you get all this stuff set up, the last thing you need to do is to check to make sure that all of your router nodes are evenly placed around the home near your smart home devices that really need it. The best way to check out the coverage in your home is to download a Wi-Fi tester app on your smartphone. Currently, I've been using Wi-Fi Sweet Spots on the App Store, and it has helped me catch a lot of dead spots within my home. You just walk around your home while the app is running, and you'll notice when the speed starts to go down. Once you find a dead spot, place the nearest node within that area into that area and then scan it again. And with that, you're set. I think I covered just about everything you need to know about home networking. Please like this video and subscribe for more content like this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.